first point of discussion today, which I'm sure you're going to be very happy about. Bangladesh is rich, apparently.
Apparently.
Apparently,
Good caveat, apparently.
Well, I've got the stats here, actually. I did my research.
Go on.
And so
Per capita, isn't it?
Yeah, so if we look at the past,
Yeah.
obviously when Bangladesh came to be in 1971, Pakistan was 70% richer than them.
Yeah.
Now, Bangladesh is 45% richer than Pakistan. And India as well, who like to obviously be like, oh yeah, we have a really good economy in that. Per capita income is $1947 versus Bangladesh, which is $2227. So Bangladesh per capita is more. And apparently, the reasons for this are three reasons. It's exports, social progress, and fiscal prudence. So with exports, these have grown 8.6% each year in the past decade compared to the world average of 0.4. So literally so much more.
Mm-hmm.
Social progress, whereas India and Pakistan, women in labour forces has actually gone down. In Bangladesh, it's increased. Which obviously we don't know whether that's actually.
Everything you're saying, listen, we'll discuss this.
We'll
discuss, but go on.
Yeah.
Say your points.
It's like, we'll get to that. And then also fiscal prudence. So Bangladesh maintained a public debt to GDP ratio between 30 to 40%, whereas India and Pakistan are going to come out of the pandemic close to 90%. So it's allowed Bangladesh to basically borrow and invest, whereas India and Pakistan haven't been able to do that as much. Will this last? Well, before we get into the various ethics regarding all that stuff, it's very likely that because Bangladesh is in a better situation now, they're going to have to give up some of the privileges that they had when they didn't have. So such as they're not going to have tariff-free access to developed economies, and also obviously a lot of like clothes and garments come from Bangladesh, whereas now, like, I think Vietnam was used as an example, their economy got better and they had to shift to more high value exports. But going back to the reasons why we're in this place, let's start with the whole social progress thing. So yes, women are more in the work labour force, but what is this labour if we think about that?
So this is actually kind of like, I mean, obviously, as a Bangladeshi, I am like, on the one hand, I'm like, okay, great, like the country has made a lot of progress. Financial prosperity is often part of an index that measures like post-colonial recovery, I guess. So in that way, yeah, it's great, but also like, guys, this is, I'm sorry, but like, here the Marxist in me is gonna jump out right now. You know, when we talk about so Bangladesh is one of Bangladesh's largest economies, like is export, you know, particularly textiles industry, right? I think it's like the second or third largest industry in Bangladesh. And the problem is that, okay, it generates a lot of like money, great, but it's an informal economy. So informal economy means that there are basically like almost no workplace rights, like there are, you know, it's just slave labor, essentially. Like what it is essentially slave labor. Like the way people are working in factories, like they're working in horrendous conditions with like literally earning pennies, sweatshop labor, slave labor, however you want to put it. Like it's not, even though the outcome is kind of like you can measure it in terms of, like I said before, like financial prosperity and whatever else, like the actual conditions that facilitate this are not indicative of progress, in my opinion. Specifically, like we speak about women and all that kind of stuff, like the conditions are just terrible, guys. It's literally slave labor.
Can you really call that progress?
Exactly.
Not really.
Exactly, like
we don't want it's saying it out loud. It's like, we don't want diversity in the form of slave labor. You know what I mean? Like you want
we don't want prosperity that comes from slave labor. Like one of the things that really facilitated Bangladesh's like economic growth was the fact that they have a like a seismic workforce, because obviously I think it's like the most populated, or one of the most densely populated countries in the world, and like that is basically like what they've utilized their workforce, but again, all that does is kind of like render individual workers as like disposable, because it's classed as like low skilled labor or like unskilled labor, which there is no such thing as low skill or unskilled labor, by the way, guys, but that's like technically how it's classed. And it's what they've done is like they've taken this like mass population of people, made them workers, and therefore been able to like really capitalize on like certain industries, for example the textiles industries, in that way. But again, it's you're just like treating people like machines, you know. That's literally exactly what it is. The workplace violations in Bangladesh are like terrible. Factories, I mean, like in 2013 we had like the Rana Plaza disaster. I don't know if you guys know, it's like a factory that collapsed, and it's because like there are no rules or regulations there, you know. So like to the outside we're looking in, it's like, oh yeah, great, so much financial prosperity, but it's like, at what cost?
From a like ignorant perspective, is there a very wide gap between the rich and the poor in Bangladesh?
Ridiculously, like insane. And I always find this in like poorer countries where the wealth gap is just insane. It's crazy. Like in Bangladesh, the rich are super rich, and like 90% of the country is just like poor. You know, so it's like, okay, yeah, the country, the state is now quote unquote rich, or like richer than, you know, its South Asian counterparts or whatever else, but it's like the people aren't. The people absolutely are not.
So do you think it's really something to be celebrating then?
Nah.
No.
I mean, like, no, man.
No,
Nah.
like when you think about it, it's not like realistically, what are we celebrating? That Bangladesh can basically say ha to Pakistan and India, but it's not even like justified. And that's not to say that the situation isn't similar in India and Pakistan anyway, because it is. But yeah, it's not really a sign of that much progress.
No.
So
it's just, you just always have to ask at what cost. You know, like at what cost? When most of the country is still poor, when people aren't even allowed to, like, workers aren't even allowed to unionize, when they're working in sweatshop conditions, like under slave labor, when that puts them in closer proximity to death every single day, when the economy is largely informal, at what cost?
So if you were like appointed head of Bangladesh now, what would you do? Like
socialism.
Yeah. Apart from like redistributing the wealth and that, or like if we're thinking like realistically now,
formalize the industries, particularly the garment industry.
Yeah.
Because women make up most of the workforce, you know, in the garment industry. So definitely formalize the garment industry, like get rid of sweatshop conditions. Like, it's really as simple as that, you know, give workers rights, pay them properly.
Simple as.
It is.
Do you think that would affect the actual export? Like,
yeah, I mean, like I said before, the whole kind of Bangladesh's like USP in this economic growth, or what has been really characteristic of the economic growth, is the fact that they've had such a large workforce at their disposal. But disposal here is like the operative word, because they've rendered these people disposable. When there's more of something, it is of less value. Like, economically speaking, that is economic logic, right? But in this case, the commodities are humans.
It is like just, because I'm sure some people would look at this and be like, oh, like, why can't you just like
be happy,
like celebrate the successes? But it's like,
I'll be happy when workers get their rights, you know, when workers get paid properly, when some of that wealth is redistributed to the people that helped generate that wealth, or the people that did generate the wealth entirely.